Alright, hello, this is Kyle Van Hook, and I'm here to just show you the Project Milestone for our game programming gameplay concepts tank project. So, I guess starting off, nope, not there. Let's show that our tank does spawn in right here. We can move it, and that's pretty much about it. We do have shooting, actually. Well, we have it set up to shoot, but or at least a register, but we don't actually have shooting made yet. Also, the camera, we have not gotten to cameras yet, so the camera does not follow the tank pawn. But, yeah. The tank is in game. We do have a scene built for testing here. This is also supposed to be a little bit above and beyond because I've built a whole gym. There's a shooting range there. There's like a kind of like those traffic stop cones there just to go through. There's a a height gymnasium there with different things I can go through. There's a maze over here, and there's just a couple of ramps here, and there's walls. What else? All right, actually getting into the script. Let's start with the game manager. Game manager is right here. It is a singleton instance. It has game prefabs for the pawn controller and for the player pawn. It has up-to-date lists for the pawn and the controller. It has an awake instance that makes sure there's no other instance of the game manager in here and will destroy anyone that is. We have a set up list for the tanks and the players. We have a start function where we will go through the section of spawning the player, where we will get a temporary tank pawn from the spawn tank function, which will get the game object, where it will instantiate a prefab for the player pawn at point 0 and put it into temporary tank, and then it will return that temporary tank object component pawn and put it into the pawn here. And then we do the same thing for the controller up there, spawning the player controller into the game world, where we'll instantiate this game object as a temporary player, and then get the game, and then return the component controller component, and put it in the temporary player controller. And then we will have then we will make sure the temporary player controller possesses the temporary tank pawn. And that's pretty much everything for the game manager. Yeah, updated list of controllers. Alright. Well, now, let's start with the pawns and controllers. So, starting off with the pawn, this is just the base pawn class. It has a instance the public mover, variable for the public mover, a variable for the public controller. It has variables, public variables that can be changed by designers for move speed and turn speed. On start, it will get a mover that's attached to it, and it has a already made function for the controller get controller. And it has abstract functions for move, rotate, and shoot. Going into the actual pawn, tank pawn, we see that tank pawn here is a child of the pawn class. In the start, we get the game manager and we add this pawn to the list of tank pawns, and then we also go to the base and do what's in the start here. On the strike, it will remove this from the list that it's been added to, and then it has areas or sections where it will go to the point to the mover of the pawn, and we'll do the move, rotate, and eventually we're going to have a shooter component that will do shooting, but it takes variables for the direction and the direction to rotate, and also the move speed and the turn speed. rotate. No, that's the pawn and tank pawn. Here's the base controller class. It has a pawn that hides. It automatically will do the make decisions, and it's a virtual update. It also has the public possess function, which it will, when it has a pawn, it will go pawn to possess dot controller and make it this pawn to possess. I think it makes okay, yeah, it gets the pawn that's supposed to possess, goes to controller or lack of controller if it doesn't have one, and then makes this controller the one it's supposed to use. And it does the same for this pawn and makes the pawn that we're currently trying to possess the pawn that the controller is supposed to remember. And unpossessed just removes everything. And make decisions function is a function that will be contained more in the controller player, which is the controller player is a child of the controller function controller class. It has public input action asset input actions. On start, we enable the input actions. We also add this controller to players list in the game manager. On destroy, we will also remove this list from the game manager. Update will do whatever happens to the update function, which is, in this case, in the base class, the make decisions function. And then the override for the make decisions, we are getting the a movement vector from our input actions that we have already set up. And then we are going to be sending to the dot pawn this movement vector into the move and to the rotate functions. And we'll eventually do something similar with the input once we make the shooter class. We don't use key codes. We're using the new input classes. New input that we're testing out. Movement is in separate tank mover. Alright. All related tank components are accessible via tank component. Yeah, that's there. Movement speed are exposed. Yeah. It is bug and error free. There's comments everywhere. I think the only thing I need to show you would be the mover. So, this is just the base mover class. It has an abstract class to the move and rotate functions. It has a private rigid body, and then at start we'll get the rigid body of whatever it is attached to. Then, in the move function, also, I probably already said this, but tank mover is a child of the mover class, so there's inheritance and everything. Final, public override move. This will take a move vector to move direction and a float speed from the pawn, and it will make it will turn the vector 2 into a vector 3 move vector, so that it can be used into the transform direction transform direction, which makes this transform from world to local space, and we get the same move vector. Then we do rigid body move position to move the current position, and add the the more vector times the move speed times delta. And then for rotate, we're going to rotate the rotation direction. We don't care about which one is this. We don't care about X because X is basically supposed to be the forward and backward. We just want the left to right, so that's why rotation.x is in this section here. Actually, no. Rotation.y. But then we do what's essentially the we multiply rotation.x by the turn speed, and then multiply that by the times delta. Make sure everything's frame rate independent. We don't care about the z, and then we have the whole thing done. Take mover. Yeah, tank is separate. Tank, movement controller, blah, blah, blah. And I've shown it before, but we do have this obstacle course. Well, actually, no. This is more of a gym. This was basically just to be designed gym, or a small gym, to be made for a player or tester to just see what everything can do. And the player does move. And I really wish we could get the camera working. Should be over here, yeah. And it can interact with pawn physic objects. And let's see if I can actually. Yeah, okay. It can go on the ramp. But this is basically everything for the project right now. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Have a good day. Thank you.